tell me, let me guess, you're from the town that I love best. Talk Memphis, I wish you would. Talk Memphis.
I've got a very nice treat today. We're in store. We've got, I told you guys a few weeks ago that CrestCore had launched a residential and retail division. So I've got Alissa Fowler in the studio this morning with me. She is the head of that division. So I'm going to be excited to talk to her in just a second. And then Dan Butler with CrestCore Realty is also again here in studio, as he is now, I guess, at this point every week, right? Dan, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Dan and I are going to talk in the second segment about zig when others are zagging. You've probably heard us mention this term before here in the studio when we're talking, but today we're going to kind of tell you what we mean and some of the examples that we're using when we mean zig when others are zagging. But let's get right into it today. Enough about Dan and I. You hear a whole lot about from us, but I want to introduce to you guys Alissa Fowler. Alissa, welcome to the show.
Good morning.
How are you?
Doing great.
Good. So I came on a few weeks ago and I introduced you and I introduced CrestCore Realty retail division. And a lot of people look at us and they think of CrestCore as an investment firm, a property management firm. And one of the things that we're trying to break away from is just being pigeonholed into that. So we've started our retail division, and we're happy to have you.
Oh, I'm happy to be here.
Yes.
and I'm very happy. And I've noticed that when I've brought it up to people that typically it was investment properties, you wanted to venture into the residential side. And any of my listings where I changed over the signage, it was, okay, great. Sounds great for you. Yeah. So it hasn't been a thing of where, well, I don't want to go with you. It's just investment properties. It's very much very open. I'm like, oh, that's great.
Wouldn't you agree that when buyers and sellers are looking anyway, they're buying... They're signing up when they sign a listing agreement or a buyer's agency agreement. They're signing that with you, wouldn't you say?
Yes, I think in this day and age, with how prevalent all the internet access is, that it's more so what you represent, not exactly your company or your brokerage, but it's how do you present yourself to your buyers and sellers, and do they want to work with you? That's more so what anything is now, is the personal relationship and how accessible you are to them. You say it's of how they can text you and get right back to you, and you're able to communicate. And there's so many that don't respond. That I've had other people say they get the listing and then they don't talk to me.
Do you hear that a lot? Do you hear, hey, I spoke with my agent, we listed the property, and now I haven't heard anything else from them?
All the time. And I think sometimes it could be the agent feels that, oh, it's not moving right now. It's not moving right away. I want to hide, be the ostrich in the sand and bury their head, versus have the talk, have the communication with them.
What market trends? So we read a lot. I read a lot just about online with real estate and trends that are going on. I know in Memphis we've got. Are we still? Let me back up. A couple months ago, even 6 to 12 months ago, all I heard was low inventory. We've got nothing to sell. This is from the residential retail world, nothing to sell. Has anything about that changed?
I think so. Some is sitting. You look, say, I live in Collierville, and a year ago, anything under $300,000, it was gone in a day. You look now, you can see 40 properties. Some are sitting. Now, if it's updated, they put the work into it, they put the money in it, they're going to sell it still in a day, in a couple days. But if it hasn't had the work done to it, it's going to sit. Buyers' expectations, I think, are going up a little bit for what the money they're paying.
And so how often, and that's one of the things, I wonder how often you see a home that is maybe in a good area, in a desirable market where it should sell immediately, but it sits because of what? What's the main reason why a home sits?
I can think of, partially in the municipal school districts where you have these different areas where you see where it's just steadily increased in price and the value of the homes. It's homeowners that have not put their own sweat equity into it or updating into it, and they still expect top dollar in the market.
That's what it is.
They're not going to get it.
But the homes that are updated and are cleaned up, granted, or whatever the updates might be.
What are the updates that people expect right now? Yeah,
that's a good question. What are those updates?
You look at a 1990 house. They have the low countertops in the master bathrooms. Those need to be gone. Those need to be replaced with updated fixtures. You need the granite or the marble or
in the bathrooms. Even in the bathrooms,
and even granite is somewhat where it's going to courts. Where I have a home that's listed right now that a buyer came in and said it looked a little bit dated. It's built in 1990, completely updated. maybe 8 years ago. And it's still, they're expecting a flip home.
So is granite dated now?
Some of it, yes.
Really? Is it just the color or is it the actual material?
It's the colors. So if you get in the grayer tones or the more neutral tones, you're updated. But if you use that new Venetian gold that was popular 12 years ago that went into or the Ubatuba.
Yeah. That sounds funny, but yeah.
But you know what I'm talking about, the black or that kind of gold color. Those are out. I mean, your home is dated.
What about brass color?
That's gone, man.
My wife says it's coming back.
Chip and Joanna. They kind of brought it back. So not the brass from the 1990s, but it's more that brushed kind of gold color.
Yeah.
That has come back some.
Yeah, my wife's all over that.
Well, because you're redoing part of your house. Or you're
redoing a house, yeah. So that, I'm like, I can't see it, but she said, we're going to be on the forefront of, I'm like, are you sure about this? But anyway.
It is. It's not for me personally.
I know, that's exactly how I worded it. Well, have your pick, but that's not what I like. But
is that one of those battles you just gave up?
Win the war. Yeah. Lose battle.
Right.
Yep.
We're talking with Alissa Fowler this morning, guys. She is the new head of our retail and residential division at CrestCore Realty. We're happy to have her in here today. But let's talk about community developments. Anything going on in Collierville? I know you live out there. Anything in Germantown or anything even downtown, midtown that you're hearing about that is exciting that's coming up?
I mean, there's a lot going on in a lot of different areas. Collierville, not so much in itself, but in Marshall County, which is right down Highway 72.
Yep.
You've got the new Amazon Fulfillment Center going in there, which that's going to bring 850 jobs to the area.
What level jobs are those? Do we know?
A lot of them are going to be packers. I mean, so it's going to, but you'll probably have some management jobs in there as well. I mean, it's going to have some multi-level jobs going in there. You've got in Lakeland, you've got the Lake District that's coming on strong where the Bell's Factory Outlet Mall used to be.
Yeah, what's that going to be?
It is going to be more so, which you see them in other communities, but it's going to have where it's shopping and then living space above it.
Oh.
Out in Lakeland. Wow.
Yes. That's why they built that new exit at Exit 20, where they spent so many years and so much money because they're having that Lake District go in.
Wow.
Which they're also talking, Lakeland wants their own high school. So you're going to
Do they really?
Yes. They've already built the middle school.
And they want their own high school
They
now.
want their own high school.
I always wondered that piece of land right there, why it never became more, where the Factory Outlet Mall was, why that never made it. Was it because
too far out, you think?
Yeah, back in
the day
10 years ago.
Yeah, too far out. Well, it was there. We moved here in 1987 in Cordova, and we used to shop out there. I mean, it was there since the 80s. Yeah. And then it just slowly, people didn't shop at Factory Outlet Malls.
Man, I remember watching the video of them tearing that thing down.
Yeah.
They used to have a card shop out there. Anyway, guys, we're talking to Alissa Fowler with CrestCore Realty. She is the head of our retail division. You can reach her at 901-371-1758, or you can email her, alissa@crestcore.com. I want you to brag on yourself for just a second here. Dan and I typically come on the show and we don't do a whole lot of self-promotion. We try to give our investors the ins and outs of our experiences with investing. But tell me a little bit about what separates, I'm going to ask you to do this. So tell me a little bit about what separates you from other agents, why you think maybe going with Alissa and CrestCore is going to be a little bit more beneficial from, a big agent with a big firm here in town.
I think I'm always reachable. That's a big thing is you can always I'm going to text you back typically within 5 minutes, unless I'm out of town or unless I'm in a plane.
Yeah.
I'm going to reach back out to you. You can always get a hold of me, and I don't have a big ego. I'm not going to be afraid if there's something you want me to try or I need to ask advice from somebody else, I'm going to do everything in my power to get your house sold or find you a house.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't know everything. I don't claim to,
Sure.
but I know other people that do.
Right. When I first started in real estate way back when, one of the funniest things ever was I would catch myself in these situations where a new licensed agent, of course this isn't you, but with me, I was a newly licensed agent, and I would have people come in. I was working new construction. They would come into the model home and start just, reeling off questions one after the other. And I didn't know, of course, at the time, know all the answers. So one thing I always did, and this is what I think back then separated me, was I would always write them down. If I didn't know the answer to the question, I would not hesitate to say, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. So I can appreciate that stance. I mean, if it's something that you don't know, you're always willing to go find out. So no, that's a great feature in my mind. Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes.
No, and I can talk to a brick wall, so I can get along with anyone. I can flex towards different personalities.
Sure.
I don't have a problem asking a question.
That's good. All right. Well, let me ask you one more thing, and then we'll let you run. I was trying to mainly just get your info out there, but let's talk about some of the technology, interest rates and technology, different things if you can hit on. What is everything? I know Keller Williams is talking about they're coming out with an application that is trying to top Zillow. I know that most people are on their phones, right? I mean, do most of your buyers reach you or clients reach you through phone?
Yes, it's 100%. It's all about your internet presence, and I think in this market we're seeing where it's been so strong for a seller's market that I see some things where I see so many cell phone pictures on listings, and I think that's a sloppy way to go.
Yeah,
you've got to do the professional pictures, your online presence. They're viewing your house initially from the internet pictures.
And that's their first impression,
That's
right?
their first impression. If you've got a million things out in your countertops and in your bathroom vanities, they're looking at that. They're not looking at the vanities. They're looking at all your stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it's that first impression is key. So you've got to have professional pictures. And then on interest rates, I got to see a little bit towards the end of last year. You saw a little bit dip. You saw a little bit of nervousness of buyers.
Yeah.
But you're talking to Ludi from Independent Bank, it's interest rates. She thinks they're going to hold steady. You've got a credit score of 740 where you're getting the low fours, for the foreseeable, for the next year. She doesn't see them going up.
That's great.
Tremendously. So you can it's a great time to be a buyer. It's a great time to be a seller right now too, because you're getting top dollar for your house. But as a buyer, you're still getting a fair deal, but you're getting a good interest rate. And so.
Yeah. So the time is now.
The time is now to buy or sell.
Hey, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. Thanks for your time. Guys, don't hesitate to give Alissa a call. I mean, if you've listened to me on the show, you know that we don't do a whole lot of self-promotion. It's just not really how we've catered the show. But I am going to ask you to call Alissa. So if you're in the Memphis area, surrounding areas, and you're interested in selling your home or you're in the market for buying one, give Alissa a call. It's 901-371-1758, or you can email her at alissa@crestcore.com. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Dan?
Yeah, man.
Finally getting to you, bud.
Yeah, man.
Let's talk about zigging and zagging when or zigging when others are zagging, or vice versa. What you and I like to use this term. I've you started it, and I've kind of picked up on it more, but it makes total sense. The phrase does, but what in real estate, what are we talking about when we say we're going to zig when others are zagging?
Things get hot. Certain zip codes and types of properties and types of products and ways to buy. The herd follows, and all of a sudden you got all this competition, and it's like, what can you do? Let the herd keep going, and you try to go off on a different direction. Where it's less, competition. Better buys. All that. What can you do to to think that way versus just, oh wow, everybody's buying a 3.2 in Cordova for $90,000 for $1,200 rent.
Yeah.
Why
do we want to be in that?
Why do I want to be in that competition? So I've just, ever since I started this business, back in 2001, I've always tried to think about, watching the trends, watching where people are going, and not caring about where they're going, and think about where I want myself to go. You know what I mean?
Maybe the same thing, just in a different area, or maybe the same thought process.
Yep.
But maybe
for a different avenue
to get there.
Different way to purchase it, or and I think I wrote this down. I love that Warren Buffett quote. Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful.
Yeah.
So kind of equates to this, and kind of not. Just I don't think it's so much a fearful thing, but
it can be, though, especially with investing. I mean, if they, if a trend is to go out and buy a certain product, I mean, it's human nature to go the safest route. One of the things that I think that we're good at is putting our investors into situations that we've been in. And what I mean by that is we're not asking, when we say zig and zag, we're not asking you to zig in the dark with us. You and Douglas are really good at, hey, let's go off on this and zig on our own, find out if this works. If it does, let's participate and then show our investors what we've done. Example being Jackson. We don't know anybody in Memphis that I'm aware of that has gone into Jackson and has really not just bought a home or two, but has taken on the city and the culture because it is different. I mean, no matter what you say, although it's 65 miles away, it's the same. I mean, it's a different place completely. So we have taken that as we got into Jackson. That's one of the things that we're talking about. Meaning, we're zigging when others are zagging up there. We're going into areas where we're finding good deals, good tenants, and we're slowly but surely getting that in front of our investors.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like that's a great example. At the most latest example that we've tried to do, because the Renters Warehouse of the world, I'm trying to think, Home River Group, those kind of guys. They're looking for big markets where they can, Renters Warehouse will, proudly state they won't buy anybody that with less than 500 houses under management. And so there's a ton of people with 200 to 500.
Yep.
And that just are just happy being at 200 to 500, and if you can help, work with them and,
right.
Turn that into 600, 700, 800 100 units, that's a win. So but for me it all started, if I go back to the original, like when we started this business, I mean, one of the ones that I read a book one time, it was about 2-bedroom houses, and if you think about the hedge funds, do anyone buy 2 bedrooms that you can think of?
No.
Now, I can't think of one hedge fund that buys 2 bedrooms. I'm sure there might be 1 or 2.
Yeah.
There might be some. I don't want to put absolute.
Someone's going to call us right after here. Hey, I got one.
So that's why I'm always, like my son, almost never. But, and some of the guys at Turnkey and those guys, they don't sell 2 bedrooms. So why not,
why not try to
go get some 2 bedrooms and make it? I mean, those are some of my best houses. Our best houses, like, rent for $650. Now 2-bedroom that's a $400 or $500 rental. That's a little bit different beast. But $600, $650. I mean, that's a sweet spot.
I have 2 of those, and I have no issues with them.
Yeah, they're great little houses. They cost less for the AC, cost less for the roof. There is some argument about the amount of rent you get, and the water heater still costs the same, or some of the things that you do. But I think overall, because you got into a $10,000 or $15,000 cheaper than that 3-bedroom, because everybody else is bidding on the 3-bedroom. This just opens you up for more possibilities. So that was one that was big. I mean,
what's some of those other examples?
Yeah, like apartments.
Yep.
How many people are from California trying to get that 100+ apartment unit?
Yep.
How many out there that we see that are 20 or 15 or 10?
Very few. Right? I mean, are you seeing more of those or less of those than versus like 100?
I just think the competition to buy the 100 is much higher.
Yep.
Versus a 20.
Yep. Because
the 20, people can't get their head around. I've been on a panel at IMN several times with about small multifamily, because people kind of don't understand under 50 units. What do you do with that? You can't put a full-time staff in place, and so you have to. We have to, for us, weekly inspections and driving by and keeping the yard up every 2 weeks and trash. And I mean, there's a lot of nuances that, if you had it 100+, you got somebody that's their job is going there every day to live or, work in that office and make it happen. So
there's also way fewer buyers for that.
Correct.
When you look at it on that end, there's just, there's not very many people that can pull that off. There's a ton of people that can pull off a $40,000, single family. There's not a ton of people that can pull off those bigger unit.
Well, that's just like in the property management world. I mean, there's not many of us that do the small multifamily.
Yeah.
But the guys that do the large multifamily, they can't even think about doing can't think about doing a 20 unit apartment. In their mind, they just can't.
They just don't know how to put it together.
They don't know how to put it together. They just right. They don't know how to make money. And I'm kind of the opposite. I'm like, how am I going to make money? I got to get hundreds and hundreds of units of multifamily, so it keeps me out of that lane. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I think tax sales was big. We did that for a long time when we first started, and then all of a sudden it got automated.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden you got everybody all over the world was bidding on the same house that you were getting for $12,000.
Yeah.
That's worth probably $50,000. Now it's getting bid up to 30+. And
because
now
some guy in Europe can sit there and be bidding on it.
Yeah, and he thinks it's such an awesome deal, which, it's still a decent deal, but
it's an awesome deal at 12.
It's an awesome deal at 12 because there's so much risk of just the title and, because you don't know. It's kind of like opening a Christmas present. You don't know what's going to be inside that house.
Like your first one you bought, right?
Oh, yeah.
I love that story.
Yeah. 2 dead dogs, a couple rats that were smashed because of all the trash.
Oh.
Three 30-yard dumpsters of trash. But we were willing to take that risk because we got it for $12,000 for a house that's now worth, $125,000. So
I know there's some investors listening right now that would take that.
They take it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, right.
But now, it'd be hard to go get that same deal.
No, those aren't there
because
the tax
sale has gotten just so popular. Then we moved to land bank. We did land bank for a while.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't that many people. There'd only be a handful of us over there bidding on land bank houses because people didn't understand it, whatever. And now everybody and the brother goes to the land bank sale,
So they got to think of something else.
They got to think of something else, And so, I thought it was a good example. Things come back around in that sense of there'll be a time when tax sales gets, less.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
and then you can go
some
back
regulation. You go back to it. That's where I was going with that. Like wholesalers, they all went from direct mail to cold call. What's next? You know what I mean? Like
There's all kinds of
so now everybody calls and like you talk to a seller and he's like, man, you're the 7th person I've talked to
that's
today.
called me.
Like, so what's the differentiator now? That you got to figure out.
I think that's what separates the wholesalers too. Since we're talking about those guys, is the creativity that they can, that they can apply, I guess, to their marketing and how well they can reach the sellers. Because it's all about reaching the seller, right? I mean, that's all that it is. And what I mean by that is not just sticking a letter in the mail to an address that's on the public record, because that that could be. They could have moved out of that address years ago, but to really get in front of that seller. So yeah, that's what's separating those guys. Craigslist versus MLS.
Yeah, I mean, I spent a ton of time on Craigslist early on.
Yeah,
just perusing. I learned who was putting it on there, and then I'd call them and start up a conversation. Next thing you know, you're buying a house. Yeah, but nobody else was calling them because they didn't think of that idea. But then that idea becomes popular, and then you gotta
now you put something on Craigslist, you're getting flooded.
Right, you're getting flooded. So, and some of this is driven by, from the zigzag standpoint, like market fluctuations.
Yep.
As soon as the market shifts another way, like build to rent. That's the new hot.
Yeah.
I mean that everybody talks about that.
Yeah, I know.
And I know you love it to death. But
I just can't.
You're not going to zag over there, are you?
I'm not zagging over. I mean, yeah, that's a whole nother show. I don't. We had a meeting with a guy Friday, but I think the key to that is, and we'll move on.
Yeah.
But if you own the HOA,
sure.
If you can own the HOA as the developer and have one in place that's strong, I think maybe it can last. But I just try to imagine what that looks like in 6 or 7 years. But what else? Give me some of those other examples.
Yeah, small commercial. Mm-hmm. If I was a wholesaler, I'd be hitting up small commercial. Like no wholesaler hits it.
None. Yeah, I don't know anybody. Do you? Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't sit here and name you one. Out of all the wholesalers we know, I don't know one that is really diving into commercial.
I think, if I was a wholesaler, that's one of the things I would work on because everybody else is hitting the same houses you're hitting. Bulk packages versus single homes.
Mm-hmm.
If you can figure out either through partnerships or with people or your banks or lines of credit, I mean, you see this because you're listing. I mean, your amount of people that call you on a single family home for sale that's an investment property is through the roof, right?
That's right.
But when you get to that bulk, say 10 houses,
it narrows it down.
Like your phone's not ringing as much, but you got a whole different group of people calling you.
That's right. It's just buying power. There's way more people that have the buying power on for one home versus 5.
That's right.
So it's just simple as that.
That's right. So if you can create that opportunity for yourself, that's what I'm saying.
You're in a much smaller pool.
Right. That's zigging when others are zagging. So,
and we're just throwing out some ideas for you guys. So, I mean, like, you can think of your own zigging and zagging. We're just trying to give you some things that, that have come
works,
to mind.
That's been done in the past that will repeat itself,
What are some things to consider?
Yeah. I mean, to me, part of it's how much competition.
Yeah. So if you're in an arena where everybody that's around you is doing the same thing, I mean, this really applies to wholesalers. I mean, because I know those guys are showing up at houses and there's either somebody there ahead of them or somebody's coming after them.
I can't tell you how many times I've heard the wholesalers said the lady's like, "Oh, you're my seventh, today," and then it just becomes a relationship, a trust deal. Which one she trusts the most,
That's exactly right.
But I mean, I think I don't know if this is a good zigzag example. You tell me. But when we were first starting out, we became friends with some of the courthouse step guys.
Yeah.
And I was like, I went down there once. I was like, number one, you got to think about what zigzag, play to your strengths. And I was like, I could not see myself going down there every day, playing games, almost like politics. You know what I mean? To get a house.
Oh yeah.
And so I just partnered up with a couple of guys, and they'd go, they did the title search. They rode by the house to make sure it existed and was in good shape. And I'd give them $3,000-$4,000 the day after closing for that house, and keep on rolling. And people are like, "Why you gave up $3,000-$4,000?" Well, if I went down there, they're going to bid me up anyway.
You weren't going to get it.
I wasn't going to get it. So
if you were, you'd have paid 10 more for it.
So I was able to stay focused on our business, and managing and all that stuff and then also bank relationships and all that stuff, and let somebody else do all that work. So to me, that was a practical example of zigging versus zagging. I could have gone in there in the foray of all that and really learned it. And to this day, I've only been, I think, twice.
The goal is to get the house.
Right.
I mean, so
at buying it right.
Yeah, so if you're getting it at the courthouse steps, you're buying it right, and if you got to pay a couple extra grand on it, I mean that's obviously worth it.
Can you add value to the deal versus somebody else?
Yeah. What do you mean by that?
What do you bring to the table? In that courthouse example, there was nothing I could do.
Yeah.
So it was better for me to stay working on what I was better at, operations and all that kind of stuff versus, bidding, and I don't do well with politics. You know what I mean? I just knew that wasn't.
Yeah.
So I knew I couldn't add any value being at the courthouse steps. It just wasn't. I'm trying to think of another example. 2-bedroom or the 20-unit apartments. Can I add value? Yes. I mean, there's only a handful of us that can even manage
that much.
That 20, 30-unit apartment. I can name off the management companies that do it, and there's not many. Versus there's 20-something that manage single families all day long.
Or how many management companies we got in Memphis?
Oh, at least 20. It's probably 30 or 40. It's probably like 50.
How many over 100 houses?
That's what I don't know. There's a lot of single agents out there that do 50 houses, 70 houses.
Could you imagine being a single agent doing
that's your full-time job. Yeah. So, but the biggest thing of all of this, if people could hear us say, is whatever you're zigging or zagging, you might want to not zig when others are zagging. You might want to stay with the zag.
Yeah.
If you can still buy it right.
Yeah, this is not the message is not you have to go do this.
Start off and oh my gosh, I can't follow them anymore.
No, that's right. No, that's not the message. The message is if you're going with the flow and you're getting some deals, that's fine.
That's right.
But don't be so blindsided that you can't look off, and pay attention to something else, and just keep your kind of nose to the grind. Well,
I mean, part of it's how many deals if you're doing one a year.
Yeah, what's the difference?
What's the difference? If you're doing one a quarter, I'd still say,
what's the difference?
But if you're doing handfuls a month, I think you need to be thinking about how to zig and zag. We got turnkey guys that are now in 38106 and 38109 and 38112, and they've been in 38127, but I mean they're in zip codes that
we would have never thought about.
Never thought that they would ever go. But they've got to do it to keep their business going. So they're zigging, whatever.
That's zagging.
You're zagging. Yeah. So, I think, how big a learning curve do you have? To go off, and if you're going to go from MLS straight to tax sale, do you have the time and the effort to figure out how that tax? Because there's a lot of intricacies of the tax sale. You can't just go over there and bid on a house. Okay, all right,
mine.
That's mine. Let me go walk in there and rekey and start working on it. That's the smartest thing you could ever do. Right. You dealt with tax sale just last week. You couldn't even sell it, right? You found out that the title
my guy
was encumbered by a tax sale. So
8 or 9. He bought 8 or 9. He wanted to sell them all, and none of them have a clean title.
Yeah, none of them. So he either thought he could, bypass the system, or just didn't understand the system. You know what I mean? But the system is what it is.
I pretty much know he didn't understand.
Gotcha.
He did not realize that
You had to have quiet title.
It's a green card that has to be signed by the previous owner,
showing they got served and all that stuff.
And that they're not going to have a claim against the property. They've let it go. So yes, there are some steps. Now he can still sell those. It's just he's got a few steps. He's got to go through to clean them up.
That's $2,000 a house to get that quiet title. Unless you went through it and studied it and read and talked to others that have done it, you just can't. It just would not be good to zig into that foray, for example.
You definitely need to do your homework if you're going to go off. So it's super easy from a knowledge and experience standpoint to stay with the herd, right? Because you can see that what other people are doing. You can see mistakes. You can also see successes. But if you're going to zag, when others are zagging, make sure that you educate yourself, that you're extremely familiar with whatever you're zigging with, to make sure you don't get caught in the situation. Because I know for a fact this guy's not going to have. Maybe he has it. He's not going to want to spend $2,000 per house to get those things cleaned up. That's why he's selling them to begin with. He was selling them to make a profit. I don't think he had any intention
to paying that fee
and keeping it long term. I think it's something that snuck up on him, and now he's likely going to have to, save some money from rent and do stuff like that in order to get those things cleared up.
I think that that goes into just not being naive and just asking a ton of questions.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times early on I went to meet people that were trying to sell me a house, and you found out they just got it quit claimed before a tax sale. All right. Well, that didn't do jack. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That just delayed the inevitable. Mm-hmm. And sometimes even then the house got sold at tax sale, even with quit claim and play. You know what I mean? Like, it just got so messy. But if you don't ask all the right questions and do the title search and know what you're, getting into, or go with the wrong, title company that doesn't do the due diligence. But
that's important.
Yeah.
Let's talk about singular focus.
Yeah, man.
Tell me what you mean by singular focus. What does that look like?
I think it just plays into this zig and zagging pretty well because
in relation
to it. I mean, just because you become a subject matter expert, an SME, to become a subject matter expert or whatever you're trying to go into.
Yeah.
Dig in, dig deep. You might not be doing all the work, but at least you need to understand how it all plays and it comes together.
Yeah.
So
knowledge of your competitors.
Yeah.
I love that one, man. I used to do, when I was in new construction, I used to go mystery shopping. Mm-hmm. So I would sit in a model home, right? Quick story. Sit in a model home all day long. People would come to me, and I would, hello, here's a model home, buy a house. Well, we would leave the model some days and go to either, not in our direct competition, but go to other neighborhoods and walk in like a buyer and have them pitch to us and try to sell to us and get, you might not think that anything they're saying for the first 20 minutes is worth keeping, but on the way out, you say bye and they say something else to you and it catches you like, hey, wait a minute, that's good.
It's good.
I'd mystery shop all the time. So knowledge of your competitors to me is huge.
And let's make sure we separate that, like, not being like the competitor, but knowledge of the competitor,
knowing what they're doing,
know what they were doing, so that, because I got in a phone conversation for 30 minutes last night with a lady in California who's got an apartment. She's been through a third management company. What's different?
Yeah.
Why should I try you? So you need at least to know where others are coming from to explain how you got to where you're going. You know what I mean? But I don't really care what, don't worry about. I used to think, I can't tell anybody, that's what's been so good about this radio show. I guess just going back to the competitor thing, understanding what they're doing, but don't worry about what they're doing. Does that make sense? Like,
I never cared how they were selling me or what they were selling me. I just wanted to hear some different lingo and language and understand what they're selling.
Yeah.
I didn't care necessarily if they had something better or worse than I did. I just wanted to know what it was, and it educated me on how to proceed with my clients. Same thing with here. If you know what other wholesalers are doing, if you're a wholesaler, we're on that today, but and you know what they're doing, it helps you kind of distinguish yourself and separate yourself. It gives you some other ideas. I don't want to go do that. Same thing. It's the same principle as zigging and zagging.
That's
right. I mean, like, you hear what others are doing,
which gives you information to know. Maybe I can go. That's exactly kind of where the concept for me came. It's like, oh, well, they're going over here.
Yeah.
I understand it and why. So what else is out there?
So I'm going to go over here.
And so, I just don't worry about competitors. I just want to know what they're doing, So, and then for me, it's like, I can't tell you how many times I get in conversation with, talking about subject matter expert versus zigging and zagging. It's like everybody wants to do everything.
Yeah.
And that's where we kind of get with this singular focus, man. Don't be all things to all people or try to do all things at once. I mean, I told a wholesaler this weekend that, he's been doing wholesaling 8 years and now getting into flipping. And some people give him a hard time, about it. And I'm like, dude, all I did was buy and hold for 10.
Yeah.
Before I did anything else.
Got really good
I got really good at buy and hold,
yeah.
And so, for me to sell was, act of Congress last year to sell a few, but, I think, but I didn't add on a layer of property management. We didn't add on a layer of, the maintenance company. Like I thought about that when I was talking to him, 10 years buy and hold, and then property management started. And it was another 3 years before even maintenance company was even discussed.
Yeah.
Then it was another 2 or 3 years before finance companies discussed.
And this is in relation to your 80%. You need to have 80% of your systems and process figured out before adding something else new to it.
I think so. I think you need to get it humming,
real close to
humming. Or at least you got it going down the road, and what you got your last little bit of things you got to tighten up, before you go diving into something totally different.
I do this with it. I tell investors this right here that, they'll talk to me about different products. And what I mean by different products are different rental ranges. So if I've got a single family guy and he's talking about 800 or 900, then he looks at me, and he says, well, tell me about this $25,000 house that's rented for 450 or 500. Yes, that's great. Let's get good at your base. Let's get you several of these $800 rentals in place. Let's get several of them cash flowing. And then let's come over. If you want to improve your portfolio numbers at that point, then let's come over here and take a chance. If that doesn't work, you're still in business over here versus taking a chance at the very beginning on something that might, it's a little reckless, a little more chance involved with it or risk involved, and sticking with something that you're good at first.
Yeah. And I think, a couple of things. One is, when you're trying to get that singular focus and that systems and process, lay out the process from start to finish.
Yeah.
And who's responsible for it.
Yeah.
And what's your, standard operating procedure, and when you got that and you can really see that and understand it and everything's covered, then maybe you can go into something else, but don't try to do all at once. I think I threw out there, Rich Harrell was a good example that I think about.
Great guy.
Was he AT&T?
Verizon.
Verizon started doing wholesaling. I mean, he did wholesaling for several years
before he left that,
and now he's doing. I would say he flips
more than he
wholesaling, and probably majority. But he didn't just go wholesale one or two deals and start flipping. Like that.
He got really good at that and then moved on.
Yep.
I'd encourage everybody, if you're listening this morning and you're focused on you heard us when zigging and zagging, just make sure that you educate yourself on the zag. If others are zigging, it's easy to know that. The one takeaway I would say today is just make sure you educate yourself on the zag and take chances.
That's a great point.
It is. I mean, you got to take some chances. If you're going to get out there if you're going to zig when others are zagging, you're going to have to take that chance. So
low cost experiment.
You love that.
That's my favorite phrase.
Dan, thanks for joining me today.
Man.
Alissa Fowler, she is the head of our residential and retail division. You can reach her at 901-371-1758. I appreciate her coming on today. Thank you guys for listening to the Memphis Real Estate Hour. We'll catch you next week at 8 a.m.